In the shadowy world of World War II, where battles raged not only on land, sea, and air, but also in the realm of intelligence, one secret weapon stood above all others: the Enigma machine. To the Nazis, it was the unbreakable code, the guarantee that their orders, strategies, and secrets would remain hidden from Allied eyes. To the Allies, it was a wall, impenetrable, mysterious, and deadly. But behind the scenes, a group of unlikely heroes, mathematicians, linguists, engineers, and puzzle solvers, were racing against time to crack the code and change the course of history. This is the story of the Enigma Codebreakers, how Allied geniuses defeated Hitler's secret weapon. The Enigma machine was a marvel of German engineering, a cipher device that looked like a typewriter but was capable of producing millions of possible code combinations. Each day, the settings of the machine were changed, creating a new, seemingly random pattern of letters. German military and naval commanders believed that Enigma was unbreakable, and they used it to transmit everything from battlefield orders to U-boat positions in the Atlantic. The security of the Reich depended on it, but the Allies were determined to break Enigma's grip. The story begins in the years before the war, in the offices of the Polish Cipher Bureau. Polish mathematicians, led by Marian Rejewski, had made a breakthrough in understanding the logic behind Enigma's rotors. Using a combination of mathematics, intuition, and a little luck, they built replicas of the machine and began to read some German messages. But as the Nazis increased the complexity of Enigma, the challenge grew. In 1939, with war looming, the Poles shared their secrets with British and French intelligence, hoping that together they could keep up with the ever-changing code. The heart of the British code-breaking effort was Bletchley Park, a sprawling Victorian estate north of London. Here, a secret army of code-breakers was assembled, men and women from all walks of life, united by their intellect and their determination to defeat the Nazis. Among them were some of the greatest minds of the age: Alan Turing, a brilliant mathematician and pioneer of computer science; Dilly Knox, a veteran cryptanalyst; Gordon Welchman, a master of organization and logic; and Joan Clarke, a gifted mathematician who would become one of the few women to rise to the top ranks of the team. Life at Bletchley Park was a world apart from the front lines. The codebreakers worked in cramped, drafty huts, surrounded by stacks of intercepted messages, endless cups of tea, and the constant pressure of deadlines. The work was grueling and often monotonous, hours spent searching for patterns, testing hypotheses, and running endless calculations by hand. But the stakes could not have been higher. Every message decrypted could mean the difference between victory and defeat, life and death. The first challenge was to understand how Enigma worked. The machine used a series of rotors, each with 26 positions, to scramble the letters of a message. The settings of the rotors, along with a plug board that swapped pairs of letters, created a staggering number of possible combinations, over 150 million. Each day at midnight, the Germans changed the settings, rendering the previous day's work useless and forcing the codebreakers to start from scratch. To keep up, the team at Bletchley Park needed more than just brain power. They needed machines. Alan Turing, inspired by the earlier work of the Poles, designed an electromechanical device called the bomb bay. The bomb could rapidly test thousands of possible Enigma settings, searching for the one that would turn a scrambled message into readable German. The first bomb was built in 1940, and soon dozens more were in operation, their whirring and clicking a constant soundtrack to the codebreakers' efforts. But the bombs were only part of the solution. The codebreakers also relied on cribs, educated guesses about the content of German messages. Common phrases, weather reports, or repeated orders could provide a foothold, allowing the team to narrow down the possibilities. Sometimes, mistakes by German operators, such as sending the same message twice with different settings, provided crucial clues. The work was a blend of science, art, and luck. As the war progressed, the importance of breaking Enigma grew. Nowhere was this more true than in the Battle of the Atlantic, where German U-boats threatened to cut off Britain's supply lines. The U-boats used a special version of Enigma, with extra rotors and more complex settings. For months, the Allies struggled to keep up, and the losses mounted. But in 1941, a daring raid on a captured U-boat yielded codebooks and settings that gave the codebreakers a vital edge. Suddenly, The Allies could read U-boat messages in real time, rerouting convoys and turning the tide of the battle. The impact was immediate and dramatic. Ships that would have been sunk were saved. U-boats that had hunted with impunity were now the hunted. Winston Churchill would later say that the only thing that ever really frightened him during the war was the U-boat peril, and it was the codebreakers at Bletchley Park who helped to end it. But the work was never easy, and the enemy was always adapting. The Germans continued to improve Enigma, adding new rotors, changing procedures, and tightening security. Each time, the codebreakers had to start over, racing against the clock to find new weaknesses. The pressure was relentless, and the secrecy absolute. Few outside Bletchley Park knew what was happening there, and even within the team, information was tightly compartmentalized. Despite the challenges, the codebreakers persevered. Their work was a triumph of intellect, collaboration, and determination. They were driven not by glory or recognition, most would remain anonymous for decades, but by the knowledge that their efforts were saving lives and helping to defeat one of history's greatest evils. In the next section, we will dive deeper into the personalities and breakthroughs at Bletchley Park, the daily life of the codebreakers, and the extraordinary teamwork that made the impossible possible. Bletchley Park was a place unlike any other in wartime Britain. Hidden behind high hedges and guarded gates, it was a world of secrets, urgency, and relentless intellectual challenge. The people who worked there were as diverse as the tasks they faced. Some were recruited from the universities of Oxford and Cambridge, others from the ranks of school teachers, chess champions, crossword puzzle experts, and even debutantes with a knack for languages. The only thing they all had in common was a sharp mind and a willingness to serve in total secrecy. The daily life of a codebreaker was a study in contrasts. On the one hand, the pressure was immense. Every day, new encrypted messages arrived by the hundreds, each one a potential clue to the enemy's plans. The codebreakers worked in shifts around the clock, often 7 days a week, racing against the midnight deadline when the Germans would reset the Enigma machines. On the other hand, the atmosphere at Bletchley Park was surprisingly informal. There was little of the rigid military discipline found elsewhere in the war effort. People addressed each other by first names, and the huts where they worked were filled with laughter, music, and the clatter of typewriters. Alan Turing, perhaps the most famous of the Bletchley Park codebreakers, was a man of extraordinary intellect and eccentric habits. He was known for riding his bicycle around the grounds with his gas mask slung over the handlebars, chaining his tea mug to a radiator to prevent theft, and working late into the night, fueled by endless cups of tea and the occasional apple. Turing's genius lay not only in his mathematical brilliance, but in his ability to see patterns where others saw only chaos. His design for the bomb machine was a turning point in the war against Enigma, and his leadership inspired those around him to push the boundaries of what was possible. But Turing was far from alone. Dilly Knox, a veteran cryptanalyst who had worked on German codes since World War I, brought a wealth of experience and a wry sense of humor to the team. Gordon Welchman, a mathematician and master organizer, developed new methods for managing the flood of intercepted messages and coordinating the work of hundreds of codebreakers. Joan Clarke, one of the few women in a senior role, was a brilliant mathematician whose quiet determination and sharp mind earned her the respect of her colleagues and a key place in the Enigma effort. Women played a crucial role at Bletchley Park. While the most famous names are often men, the majority of the staff were women, over 75% by some estimates. They operated the bombs, managed the flow of messages, and worked as translators, clerks, and analysts. Many were recruited from the Women's Royal Naval Service, the Women's Auxiliary Air Force, and the Women's Army Corps. Their contributions were vital, and their dedication was unwavering, even as they faced the challenges of long hours, secrecy, and the knowledge that a single mistake could have deadly consequences. The work at Bletchley Park was a blend of science, art, and intuition. Codebreakers would start by looking for cribs, likely words or phrases that might appear in a message, such as weather report or Heil Hitler. They would then use these cribs to test different Enigma settings, hoping to find a match that would unlock the rest of the message. The process was painstaking and often frustrating, but when a breakthrough came, it was exhilarating. The moment when a string of gibberish suddenly resolved into clear German was known as a break, and it was celebrated with cheers, laughter, and sometimes a round of drinks at the local pub. Teamwork was essential. No one person could break Enigma alone. The process required mathematicians to design algorithms, engineers to build and maintain the bombs, linguists to translate the messages, and analysts to interpret the intelligence. The codebreakers worked in small teams, each focused on a particular branch of the German military: Army, Navy, Air Force, or SS. They shared information, debated strategies, and supported each other through the long hours and inevitable setbacks. Security was paramount. Everyone at Bletchley Park signed the Official Secrets Act, and the penalty for leaking information was severe. Even within the park, information was compartmentalized. People knew only what they needed to know to do their jobs. Many did not learn the full extent of their own work until decades after the war. Letters home were censored, and families were told only that their loved ones were doing important war work. The secrecy was so effective that even after the war, many veterans kept silent about their experiences for years. Despite the isolation and pressure, there was a sense of camaraderie and purpose that bound the codebreakers together. They knew that their work was saving lives, rerouting convoys, foiling attacks, and giving the Allies a crucial edge in the battle for Europe. The knowledge that they were making a real difference helped sustain them through the exhaustion and uncertainty. The breakthroughs at Bletchley Park were not limited to Enigma. As the war progressed, the codebreakers turned their attention to even more complex German machines, such as the Lorenz cipher used for high-level communications between Hitler and his generals. The challenge was immense, but the team rose to meet it, developing new machines and methods that laid the groundwork for modern computing and cryptography. The impact of Bletchley Park's work was felt across the war. In North Africa, decrypted messages helped Montgomery outmaneuver Rommel. In the Atlantic, the ability to read U-boat signals turned the tide of the convoy battles. On D-Day, intelligence from Bletchley Park gave the Allies confidence that their deception plans had worked and that the Germans were unprepared for the landings at Normandy. Yet, for all their achievements, the codebreakers remained in the shadows. Their work was classified as ultra-secret, and only a handful of top commanders knew the true source of the intelligence they received. The men and women of Bletchley Park returned to civilian life after the war, their contributions unrecognized and their stories untold. In the next section, we will explore the technical breakthroughs that made code breaking possible, the evolution of the Bombi and Colossus machines, and the race to stay ahead of the ever-changing German codes. The technical breakthroughs at Bletchley Park were nothing short of revolutionary. The challenge of breaking Enigma was not just a matter of intellect, but of engineering and innovation. As the Germans increased the complexity of their codes, the codebreakers needed faster, more powerful tools to keep up. This led to the creation of some of the world's first computers, machines that would change not only the course of the war, but the future of technology itself. The bomb, designed by Alan Turing and improved by Gordon Welchman, was the first of these machines. It was an electromechanical device about the size of a large wardrobe, filled with rotating drums, wires, and switches. Each bomb bay could simulate the workings of several Enigma machines at once, rapidly testing thousands of possible settings every minute. The machines were noisy, hot, and prone to breakdowns, but they were a quantum leap beyond anything that had come before. By 1943, dozens of bombies were running day and night at Bletchley Park and outstations, their relentless clatter a constant reminder of the race against time. The process of using the bomb began with a menu, a set of logical deductions based on cribs and known Enigma procedures. The codebreakers would wire up the menu, set the machine in motion, and wait for it to stop at a possible solution. When the bomb indicated a likely setting, the team would test it on a replica Enigma machine, hoping to turn the scrambled message into readable German. Success was never guaranteed, but when it came, it was a moment of triumph. But the Germans did not stand still. In 1942, the Kriegsmarine, German Navy, introduced a new version of Enigma with 4 rotors instead of 3, vastly increasing the number of possible settings. The U-boat threat in the Atlantic reached its peak, and for a time the Allies lost the ability to read the messages that guided the deadly wolf packs. The situation was dire. Convoys were being sunk at an alarming rate, and Britain's survival hung in the balance. The breakthrough came in the spring of 1943, thanks to a combination of daring and luck. Allied sailors captured U-559, a German U-boat, and recovered codebooks and settings before the vessel sank. With this information, the codebreakers at Bletchley Park were able to re-enter the game, breaking the new naval Enigma and turning the tide in the Battle of the Atlantic. The ability to read U-boat signals in real time allowed the Allies to reroute convoys, ambush submarines, and regain control of the vital supply lines. As the war progressed, the Germans introduced even more sophisticated cipher machines. The most formidable was the Lorenz SZ-40-42, used for high-level communications between Hitler and his generals. Unlike Enigma, which was operated by field units, Lorenz was used for strategic messages, orders that could shape the entire course of the war. The Lorenz cipher was far more complex than Enigma, using 12 rotors and producing a code that seemed unbreakable. The challenge of Lorenz fell to a new team at Bletchley Park, led by mathematician Bill Tutte and engineer Tommy Flowers. Tutte, through sheer brilliance, deduced the structure of the Lorenz machine without ever having seen one. Flowers, an expert in electronics, designed and built Colossus, the world's first programmable electronic computer. Colossus used thousands of vacuum tubes to process data at unprecedented speeds, scanning through millions of possible settings in hours rather than weeks. The arrival of Colossus in 1944 was a turning point. With its help, the codebreakers could read Lorenz messages almost as quickly as the Germans sent them. This provided the Allies with a window into the highest levels of Nazi command, revealing plans for troop movements, supply lines, and even the timing of major offensives. The intelligence gleaned from Lorenz, codenamed Tutte, was so valuable that it was shared only with the most senior Allied commanders. The technical achievements at Bletchley Park were matched by the ingenuity of the people who operated the machines. The bombs and Colossus required constant maintenance, calibration, and troubleshooting. Operators, many of them young women from the Women's Royal Naval Service, worked in shifts around the clock, monitoring the machines, recording results, and relaying breakthroughs to the analysts. The atmosphere was intense, but also filled with camaraderie and a sense of shared purpose. The impact of these breakthroughs was felt across the war. In the run-up to D-Day, decrypted messages from Enigma and Lorenz confirmed that the Germans had been fooled by Allied deception plans, believing the main invasion would come at Pas-de-Calais rather than Normandy. This allowed the Allies to concentrate their forces and achieve surprise on June 6, 1944. In the months that followed, ultra-intelligence from Bletchley Park guided the Allied advance across France, helped to anticipate German counterattacks, and shortened the war by months, perhaps even years. Yet, the work was never without risk. The Germans were constantly on the lookout for signs that their codes had been broken. The Allies had to be careful not to act too quickly on decrypted intelligence, lest the enemy realize the truth and change their systems. This led to agonizing decisions, sometimes allowing attacks to go ahead, knowing they could have been prevented, in order to protect the secret of Ultra. The legacy of the technical breakthroughs at Bletchley Park extends far beyond the war. The bomb and Colossus were the ancestors of modern computers, and the methods developed by the codebreakers laid the foundations for the fields of computer science, cryptography, and information theory. Alan Turing, Bill Tutte, Tommy Flowers, and their colleagues were pioneers whose work would shape the digital age. In the next section, we will explore the human side of the Enigma story, the friendships, romances, and personal sacrifices of the codebreakers, the challenges they faced in secrecy and isolation, and the impact of their work on their lives during and after the war. Behind the technical marvels and strategic victories of Bletchley Park was a deeply human story, one of sacrifice, secrecy, and the forging of bonds under extraordinary pressure. The men and women who worked to break Enigma and Lorenz were not just brilliant minds, they were young people far from home, living in a world of constant urgency and uncertainty, bound together by a mission they could never discuss outside the park's gates. Life at Bletchley Park was a strange mix of routine and intensity. The codebreakers lived in nearby hostels, country houses, or even in the manor itself, often sharing cramped quarters and working in shifts that blurred the line between day and night. The huts where they worked were cold in winter, stifling in summer, and always filled with the hum of machines, the rattle of typewriters, and the low murmur of voices debating logic puzzles or the latest cryptic clue. Meals were hurried affairs in the canteen, and leisure time was rare, but friendships blossomed in the shared struggle. Romance, too, found its way into the world of code-breaking. With so many young men and women working closely together, relationships formed, some fleeting, others lasting a lifetime. Alan Turing and Joan Clarke, for example, developed a close friendship and even became briefly engaged, though Turing later confided his homosexuality to Clarke, and the engagement was amicably ended. Many couples met at Bletchley Park and married after the war, their shared experiences forging bonds that endured long after the secrets were declassified. But the secrecy was a heavy burden. Everyone at Bletchley Park was bound by the Official Secrets Act, and the penalty for breaking silence was severe. Codebreakers could not tell their families, friends, or even spouses what they were doing. Letters home were vague, and conversations with outsiders were carefully guarded. The need for secrecy extended even within the park. People in one hut often had no idea what their neighbors were working on. This compartmentalization protected the mission, but also created a sense of isolation. The pressure was relentless. Every day brought new encrypted messages, new challenges, and the knowledge that failure could mean disaster on the battlefield. The codebreakers knew that their work was saving lives, but they also knew that a single mistake could cost lives. The emotional toll was high. Some suffered from exhaustion, anxiety, or depression. Others found solace in music, chess, or long walks in the countryside. The camaraderie of the team was a lifeline, and many veterans would later say that the friendships they made at Bletchley Park were among the most important of their lives. Despite the hardships, there was also a sense of excitement and purpose. The codebreakers were at the cutting edge of science and technology, inventing new machines, algorithms, and methods that would shape the future. They were part of a secret war, fighting not with guns but with logic and creativity. The thrill of a breakthrough, the moment when a string of gibberish resolved into clear German, was unlike anything else. These moments were celebrated quietly, with a cup of tea or a midnight walk, but the sense of accomplishment was profound. The human cost of the work was not always visible. Many codebreakers struggled to adjust to civilian life after the war. The skills they had developed, pattern recognition, logical deduction, teamwork under pressure, were not always valued in the post-war world. The secrecy that had protected them during the war now became a barrier to recognition and understanding. For decades, their contributions went unacknowledged, and many veterans kept their stories to themselves, unsure if anyone would believe them. Some, like Alan Turing, faced even greater challenges. Despite his pivotal role in breaking Enigma and laying the foundations for modern computing, Turing was prosecuted in 1952 for homosexuality, then a crime in Britain. He was subjected to chemical castration and died 2 years later, his achievements unrecognized by the public. It was not until decades later that Turing A.S. name was cleared and his legacy celebrated as one of the greatest minds of the 20th century. Others found ways to build on their wartime experiences. Joan Clarke continued her work in cryptanalysis, while Tommy Flowers and Bill Tutte became pioneers in computing and mathematics. Many women who had operated the bombs or worked as analysts went on to careers in science, education, or public service, their talents finally recognized in a changing world. The friendships and romances of Bletchley Park endured. Reunions in later years were filled with laughter, stories, and a sense of pride in what they had accomplished together. The veterans of Bletchley Park became a close-knit community, united by memories of a time when they had changed the course of history from behind the scenes. The impact of their work was felt not only in the outcome of the war, but in the lives they touched. The intelligence from Bletchley Park saved countless Allied soldiers and civilians, shortened the war, and helped to defeat one of history's greatest evils. The Codebreakers' legacy lives on in the fields of computing, cryptography, and intelligence, and in the enduring lesson that ordinary people working together in extraordinary circumstances can achieve the impossible. In the next and final section, we will reflect on the legacy of the Enigma Codebreakers, their influence on the modern world, the recognition they finally received, and the enduring inspiration of their story for generations to come. The legacy of the Enigma Codebreakers is woven into the very fabric of the modern world. Their triumph at Bletchley Park was not just a victory of intellect over machinery, but a turning point in the history of technology, warfare, and human collaboration. As the decades have passed, The story of how Allied geniuses defeated Hitler's secret weapon has become a symbol of what is possible when determination, creativity, and teamwork are brought to bear on the greatest challenges. For years after the war, the work at Bletchley Park remained shrouded in secrecy. The Official Secrets Act kept the codebreakers silent, and the world moved on without knowing the true story behind many Allied victories. It was not until the 1970s that the first details of Ultra, the code name for the intelligence derived from Enigma and Lorenz, began to emerge. Historians and journalists pieced together the story, and the public was astonished to learn that a group of mathematicians, linguists, engineers, and ordinary men and women had played such a decisive role in defeating the Nazis. Recognition came slowly, but it was deeply felt. Veterans of Bletchley Park were finally able to share their stories, and their achievements were celebrated in books, documentaries, and films. Alan Turing, once a forgotten figure, became a global icon. His face appearing on banknotes, his name attached to prizes and institutions, and his life the subject of movies like The Imitation Game. Joan Clarke, Bill Tutte, Tommy Flowers, and many others were honored for their contributions, and the women of Bletchley Park were recognized as pioneers in fields that had long excluded them. The impact of the codebreakers' work extends far beyond the war. The bomb and Colossus machines were the ancestors of modern computers, and the methods developed at Bletchley Park laid the foundations for cryptography, cybersecurity, and information theory. The idea that machines could be used to solve complex problems, that logic and mathematics could unlock the secrets of the world, became central to the digital revolution. Today, every time we use a computer, send an encrypted message, or rely on secure communications, we are living in the world the codebreakers helped to create. The story of Bletchley Park is also a lesson in the power of diversity and collaboration. The team brought together people from every background: university professors and self-taught puzzle solvers, men and women, mathematicians and linguists, engineers and artists. Their success was not the result of a single genius, but of a community working together, sharing ideas and supporting each other through setbacks and breakthroughs. In a world that often celebrates individual achievement, the codebreakers remind us that the greatest victories are won together. The moral dimension of their work is equally important. The codebreakers were motivated not by glory or reward, but by a sense of duty and the knowledge that their efforts could save lives. They faced immense pressure, long hours, and the burden of secrecy, but they persevered because they believed in the cause. Their story is a testament to the power of conscience, the importance of service, and the enduring value of doing what is right, even when no one is watching. Today, Bletchley Park is a museum and heritage site, visited by people from around the world who come to learn about the codebreakers and their achievements. The huts and machines have been restored, and the stories of the men and women who worked there are told through exhibits, films, and personal testimonies. School children study the Enigma story as part of their education, and the lessons of Bletchley Park are taught in universities, military academies, and technology companies. The inspiration of the Enigma codebreakers endures. In times of crisis, their example reminds us that even the most daunting problems can be solved with ingenuity, persistence, and teamwork. In an age of rapid technological change, their story challenges us to use our skills and knowledge for the greater good. And in a world still threatened by secrecy, division, and conflict, the codebreakers' legacy is a beacon of hope. A reminder that the human mind, when united in purpose, can overcome even the darkest of odds. As we look back on the story of the Enigma codebreakers, we are reminded that history is not just a record of battles and leaders, but of ordinary people who rise to extraordinary challenges. The men and women of Bletchley Park were not warriors in the traditional sense, but their courage, intellect, and determination helped to defeat one of history's greatest evils. Their victory was not just over a machine, but over the idea that any secret is truly unbreakable, any challenge insurmountable, or any enemy invincible. If you have been inspired by this story, remember the lessons of Bletchley Park. That collaboration is powerful, that creativity can change the world, and that the fight for freedom and justice is never finished. The Enigma codebreakers cracked Hitler's secret weapon, and in doing so, they changed the course of history forever. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, and subscribe for more Untold WWII stories. What would you have done in their place? Share your thoughts below.